You've done like a premiere?
No, we're live.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, we're going to be live for the entire stream.
Sweet.
So I have no idea if this is working yet.
We'll
It
see.
should start previewing soon. We could be live for all I know. Yep, so it's all good. All right, awesome. So welcome back, everyone. I'm Scorex, as you guys know. With me today, I have Grant Warwick. So I'm very excited to chat with him about Illuvium today. As you guys already know, at the end of this stream, we're going to do a small Q&A. And just remembering for that Grant has been focusing on the art and design of the project. So if we could avoid any questions related to tokenomics or the game or its launch dates or the private beta especially and everything like that, let's just try and keep it to the art and everything. And he has a lot of knowledge to share. So definitely use this opportunity. And yeah, so Grant, did you want to quickly tell us a little bit about the background you have in game development? I know we've heard it before, but for all those new viewers out there.
So I've actually got a pretty scattered history inside of design and art. I started out first doing graphic design when I was about 14 or 15, just with Photoshop. And then that quickly morphed into 3D modeling. Then I took my 3D modeling to doing all of the shading and lighting inside of CGI, making stuff look as photorealistic as possible, which led me to doing print work. That print work entailed doing projects for major companies all around the world, and eventually led to me doing some work on game art covers and things like that. And from there, I started teaching business, teaching advanced CGI tutorials for a few years, and then kind of went into a hiatus with the whole CGI realm just because I burned myself out doing it. I've been doing this since I was, for 20 years now. And my ears are like, I don't sleep. So, they're like double days. Like a 20-hour day to me is normal if you're grinding. So it's been a long journey, but one of the things that I never did was actually work in real-time game development. So I've done advertising for games, and I've done branding for games involving the toys and the print and promotional work for games, but not actually developed in Unreal Engine. So myself and Dimitri, who is the lead environment artist on the project and someone who I've worked with for the last 7 years, we both come from high-end print advertising, and Illuvium was like the first. We've been talking about it for years. We need to get into real time. But Unreal Engine was never good enough to match the output we would get from print. So from our perspective, we just want to do the best work physically possible. And we didn't feel like real time enabled that until ray tracing came into the view. We were waiting years and years, and we were expecting real time to take off much earlier, and it just never did. So for us to finally be able to jump into Unreal Engine, we basically did a massive deep dive over about a 3 to 4 month period last year. I basically said to Dimitri, look, man, we're going to be doing this crazy project. If you quit your job right now and come do it with me, we can finally learn Unreal Engine. And he did. Quit his job, and for the last year, we've been learning Unreal Engine. But from our perspectives, we've learned, I don't know how many different pieces of software at this stage in our career, 30, 40, 50. So like learning new software and learning how to render in different packages is quite intuitive for us at this stage. So that's how we've been able to adapt. And I'm sure we'll talk about some of the things related to that, adapting to this real-time workflow, because there are a lot of things that we can't do. And we're actually in the middle of doing final optimization. And one of the things we haven't really spoken about yet, which I'll be happy to talk about tonight, is that we're finally getting everything baked down and working performant. And we set some pretty, I wouldn't say like very optimistic standards for the performance, right? Like coming at it from how do we be a stylized Crisis? Like how do we just maximize the graphics? Because that's what I personally felt would bring the most mainstream viewers to the game. You know, like it's like very easy to shit on crypto gaming when they all look like crappy mobile games and there's no substance to it. And I'm not in control of the gameplay. That's my brother. But the one thing I did have control over was getting those AAA graphics in the game and knowing how to implement those. So it's been a journey, but we're finally coming to this point now where I've been working at 20 FPS in the viewport on a 3090 done. This is fucked. Like we're not screwed. We've just got to go through the process of baking all this down. And now we've finally done tests on low-end laptops, and we're getting like 30 FPS on these low-end old laptops. And we're like, hallelujah. Like, I've seen a couple of comments online of like, oh, they, even with the open beta application that just came out, you know, recommended high-end computer specs. And the reason we've recommended high-end computer specs is because this first private beta is we're not doing hardware optimization necessarily on that. We're doing gameplay optimization.
Yeah.
And we're still in the middle of that optimization period. There's a lot of stuff that goes into making a game optimized after all the artwork is done. And it's kind of boring and monotonous. Rather than rush that, we just thought, let's just make sure that everyone on the private beta has hardware that's going to run the game to a level we know is smooth, and then we can worry about optimization later. But it's working really well.
Yeah. There are so many games out there that are still poorly optimized, and probably the best example of a well optimized game is probably Call of Duty. So those of you out there might know that Call of Duty has always had that really good optimization. A lot of other games can be quite weak. But before we jump into all that, I would love to know two really quick things.
Yep.
So firstly, I know you played a lot of Pokemon growing up. Did you have a favorite Pokemon game or a Pokemon card or something?
The Game Boy, the Pokemon Red was the first game Kieran and I got, and we only had one Game Boy between us. So we would play through all day and just have fights over who got to play the actual game. And I remember playing that. We used to do this family trip to Lake Krakenbach. It's like in Australia, in the Blue Mountains. Sorry, is it in the Blue Mountains? It's like near. Yeah, I think it's in the Blue Mountains. But I remember there was like a 6-hour trip there, and it was just like not having the game to play tore your soul apart. So Pokemon, like I'm sure I think we're similar age, and at least close enough where we've probably lived some of the same fads in Australia. And Australia went through, late 90s, early 2000s, went through, Tarzos, Pogs, Beyblades, I marbles when I was even younger. So like going through all of those fads, Pokemon was by far the most holy shit.
Yeah. I also shared my Game Boy with my brother for a very long time.
Yeah. So
but we always used to get each game so we could split it.
Gotcha.
And things like that, which was really good. But the worst thing was on those long drives when the glare and you couldn't see the Game Boy screen, and how technology has come such a long way.
But I mean, obviously, well, I mean, from there, it wasn't just the Game Boy game; it was the collectibles as well. I don't remember ever looking at any piece of artwork before those holographic cards and going like, holy shit, like just being mesmerized by something visual, like a piece of artwork or something. Definitely Pokemon cards were the first things that gave me that, oh my God, like I want that no matter what feeling.
Yeah, I got it. I was a little bit of a collector with the cards when I was a kid, but I've only gotten recently back into it. I don't buy a lot of them or anything, but every now and then I pick up a box from EB Games, which is the Australian GameStop.
I mean, I don't know if you saw on my Twitter post the other day, but I said on my Twitter that Kieran and I had our cards stolen from us when we were young.
Saw that.
I remember we kept them stored away in one of our laundry cupboards. It was like where all the towels are kept, and I used to hide them inside of a towel. And our cleaner, we had this cleaner because it was a tennis center as well. So the cleaner would come through and do the tennis center in our house. And I remember the only person who could have known where those were was our cleaner. And I don't know if my mum annoyed her or something, or we annoyed her by being messy or something like that. But she basically came and took them. It's the heartbreak. It was brutal. Year and a half, 2 years of collecting, just rugged.
Yeah, it's not easy. It's the same. It's how I would feel if someone destroyed my Pokemon home and I lost all of my collection, because I've been collecting on the games for 15 years now or whatever, and I've got pretty much everything I've ever had. So it's very crushing. I'm sure.
What was do you remember Pokemon Snap?
Yes, I got the new one as well.
There's a new one?
They made a new one on the Switch. You should definitely play it. It's really good.
Okay. I'm skeptical.
Definitely. It's good.
Okay. Because I played Pokemon Sword and Flame and I was sitting there. This is before Illuvium had even started. Yeah, and Kieran and I are like, okay, after the Logan Paul YouTube fiasco blew up with him blowing Pokemon up again, I was like inspired again. Bought Pokemon Sword and Flame, played it for like 2 hours while Kieran was sitting there next to me. And then I was like, is this it? Like, this is what Pokemon's up to these days? Like, at least Pokemon Go was cool and innovative. This just seemed like just an absolute cop-out. I was like, wow. Like, I was like, we can do better than this, man. Like,
the new Pokemon game actually comes out on Saturday. So you might have to reserve judgment for now. So getting back to Unreal Engine really quickly. So you talked about baking and ray tracing. Just for some of those people who are kind of watching this and don't really know anything about game development or much about game design in general, can you kind of explain ray tracing and why baking is an important part of the system, how it takes a while to do and you can't just like do it in a day sort of thing? Like, can you kind of explain those processes?
So calculating the way light propagates in the real world in a physically correct way is highly calculation intensive. It's one of the most, like, understanding the way light works is incredibly complex, and to make it work real time is you have to start making shortcuts. And because if you look at a monitor, say a 1080p monitor, you've got 1920 pixels horizontal and 1080 pixels vertical. Every single one of those pixels is the sum of a calculation to determine that pixel's color. And the way the real world works is there are just an ungodly sum of photons bouncing around, trillions and trillions and trillions. The number is just so over the top mind bending that it's kind of puts into perspective what the universe maybe even is. You know, it's like when you start to understand just how complicated the way light behaves is, you go, what the hell? And to calculate that in real time is a very difficult task, because you have to make shortcuts. You have to reduce the amount of calculations you're doing while still get a kind of physically accurate result. And so ray tracing in Unreal Engine achieves that by kind of like subsampling. It doesn't sample all of the pixels. It samples an X number of pixels and then blurs the result between them. And even in Unreal Engine 4, you know, that's not a very fast and optimized way to render in game. It's very slow compared to rasterized graphics. And so you have to make a choice. You have to go, okay, we can either have real-time interactive lighting, and that means like when I'm running through the game, if I have a really strong sunlight aiming at the entrance of a tunnel, that sunlight is going to bounce into the tunnel and then cause a bunch of indirect rays to bounce around, illuminating that space. And to calculate that in real time isn't feasible for us. It is in Unreal Engine 5 with Lumen, which is a much more efficient way of calculating ray tracing and uses a combination of artificial intelligence to filter the result. And it does that in a much faster way. But because we're working in Unreal Engine 4, it's a more simplistic ray tracing implementation. And it gets just as good results as Lumen, but in a much slower way. So what we do is position all the hero lights in our environment that are going to contribute to ambient lighting. really strong light sources that have soft shadows, and we bake all of that down into a light map, which is like every single thing in Unreal Engine is comprised of assets with UVs and textures, and it in that baking process creates a subset of UVs for everything in the scene, and then just as it's calculating the ray tracing goes, okay, what value did that pixel in the real world end up as, and then map that to the UVs. And so you end up with all of those calculations that take a while, take 10, 20 minutes to bake down, compressed into a bunch of maps. And at the moment, like if I'm doing those live streams, right, that's not baked down. That's just real-time ray tracing with real-time global illumination. One of the questions I had was like, how come it's lagging? And the answer is because it's stupid to try and attempt to do this real time. It's never going to work, even on a 3090, even on a 3090 GPU. So very exciting that baking all of that stuff down, Dimitri and I have gotten the end result to within 90 to 95% identical to the ray trace version.
Okay.
With the only downside being is they're not interactive lights, but they don't need to be, right? Like that it don't have a day-night cycle as you're in the overworld.
Are you thinking of adding anything like a day-night cycle?
If we move to Unreal Engine 5, absolutely, because then we don't need to bake down any of the lighting. But a large part of making the game look so good and making it look like a Pixar film is utilizing the exact same lighting theory that Pixar would use, that I used to teach in my tutorials. You have to understand how to highlight certain edges, and you have to make sure that the intensity of certain lights balances out so that you've got a hot spot in the scene where your eye is being directed towards, and more dull and softer areas that give your eye like the ability to distinguish depth and detail where necessary. So we've kind of started to strip back and go more towards that Warcraft style, where it's like everything stylized and hand painted and has had that love applied to it, where it's like there isn't a single asset in our environment or in our overworld that hasn't been manually hand modeled and hand textured, every single last asset. And there's we haven't broken from that mold yet. We'll know we're getting lazy when we do, because even down to the final grass strands in our game, and with the team size we have, it's just like you would never attempt to do something like that, because you got to make thousands of assets all by hand.
So that actually brings me to my next question. All of these are really lining up quite nicely, but kind of like, what is the iterative design process for crafting some of these assets, and more specifically, maybe some of the alluvials? So which alluvials have you worked on personally, and what might be your favorite alluvial so far that you've designed or that someone else has designed, and kind of how do you go through that process to design the creature, its lore, backstory, whatever, and then design it moving forward, and how it might look in the overworld, and how you want it to behave when it's in the auto battler and things as well? Because have you designed some of the graphics for their attacks and things as well?
So we've actually got Roger to thank for the large majority of the character concepts. He came on early when we were trying to figure out how all of the overworld and characters and the metaverse, that you could say, I hate to use that word because we're not there yet, but like the universe that we're building had to have a defined style. And I had a very good idea early on of what I wanted to achieve, and I can concept, but nowhere near as good as someone like Roger, who's a dedicated concept artist and designer. So what I did was put together a very, very large volume of reference of stylized games, assets, characters, animations, just an entire database of what I wanted to take inspiration from and mold it into Illuvium. And early on, the ideation process basically goes, we will get on a meeting and go, okay, the goal is that every single character needs to be inspired by an extinct or near extinct animal from Earth, because we know we just thought it was a very cool idea, to base, and it's relevant to the current state of climate change and things like that. It allows us later on to tap into environmental sustainability. If we go down the route of utilizing the DAO for charitable causes and things like that, you know, like putting a spotlight on the environment and animal, you know, salvation, basically, because a lot of these animals are going to be extinct in a certain amount of time, you know, a lot of the animals in the game. So early on, it was like, okay, we all get on a meeting and just throw ideas around what would be a cool alluvial to create. And then we run through with the concept team through a bunch of designs, just rough sketches. And if you go back early into character leaks around February, March last year, it was just all concept, you know, just concepts of different alluvials. And then from the concept stage, right, I'll go in and I'll tweak things, draw over things where necessary, but haven't had to do that a lot because we got so lucky with Roger. And Roger is just been a monster. You know, he's the lead concept artist, and he's capable of doing the characters, the environments, weapons, VFX concepts. He's just got a encyclopedic knowledge of concept and design. And so I work very well with him, where I can focus on providing like fundamental feedback. Like, is this in line with the Illuvium universe? And is this going to fit with the rest of the characters? And that's having that experience with Pokemon. It's like there was something I had to do very early on, which was like really ask the question, like, what made Pokemon popular? You know, like it has to be some answers as to why everyone loved it. You know, even if you can't replicate it 100%, you can break it down. And so the entire ideation process was like, how do we make the vibe of Pokemon, but for the people who are no longer 15? You know, we can't appeal to that audience anymore because even 15-year-olds don't love Pokemon like 30 and 35-year-olds. So it has to be a little bit more of a mature audience, but still just, you know, just tapped into that Pokemon aura enough where they're like, finally, I've got something that I can enjoy as an adult. And so once we go through the concepting phase, we start modeling it out. And that modeling process, we go through many iterations early on. It was, I had to put the most effort in that first 6-month period, where it was like a lot of feedback on the sculpting and the design and the animations, because we had to get it right early. And the thing I've learned on this project is that, like, if you get it right early, like, the train will just keep rolling, you know. But if it's all in a shambles early on, it never works out. You end up going around in circles. So there has been a couple of alluvials that we've redesigned 2 or even 3 times. They get all the way to the texturing phase, and we're just yeah, it's just shit. Like, you know, we could easily just go, cool, this can be a shit alluvial that no one likes, but we just never did that. We just put it back through the pipeline. Like, there was the thylacine that, remember some of the very first images we were leaking of that super early thylacine? It's like, I probably, it just doesn't look anything like Umbre now. You know, it's just completely redesigned 3 times. And there's even still a couple of alluvials that we have to go back and redesign. But basically so, you know, ideation meeting, concept, modeling, then we go through the texturing, then the rigging, then the animation phase, then finally VFX and sound effects, and then integration. Every single alluvial in the game, and this is where, like, doing 150 of these, all with different VFX and animations. It's not like we're not saying, hey, this one is just a copy of this one with a different skin. Like, they're all unique. Every single, to do 150 of those, I'm starting to go, like, this will go down in history. Like, there's no way. Like, how did we do this?
I think you've definitely achieved all that uniqueness. Even Pokemon couldn't really capture that. I think it's very evident in the Gen 1 Pokemon, because they only had 2 colors as well, so it made it even harder for them. But you've definitely captured so much uniqueness amongst all the alluvials. I'm still so excited to see all the ones we haven't seen yet. But even some of the basic textures and concepts for the ones we haven't seen, I can already tell that they're so far different to anything you've released.
Yeah, So when I do the final NFT artwork, right? And Dimitri and I have been working on that for the last week or so, just updating. We have to wait until the final game asset has been modeled and animated, because the crazy thing is, and we planned this from the very start, was to make cinematic assets interoperable with the game. Like a well modeled cinematic asset should be able to be utilized in a game if you've done everything right. Like the same texturing pipeline that works in V-Ray applies to Unreal Engine. And so every single one of these alluvials is ready for cinematic rendering. And that's why when I go do the NFT artwork in V-Ray, it looks so good, because we're using all of those 8K textures that we've painted for the alluvials, applied the displacement maps so that the model is one-to-one to the artist's sculpt. And then all of the shaders, you're using super complex custom skin shaders and very high-end print advertising lighting. And so we end up with this like weird mix of them looking realistic with all of these stylized artistic textures. And so that's, Aaron was a little bit concerned. It's like, we can't show the artwork for the NFTs in game as 3D characters. TFT did that, and they turned out shit. People just went back to 2D artwork. And I was like, well, first of all, we're not TFT. And second of all, if you don't trust that these NFTs are going to look sick, then I don't know what to tell you. Like, go fuck yourself. Like, it was like a bit of a in-your-face insult to me, because I was like, there's no way in hell the final in-game NFTs aren't going to be V-Ray renders. And that's the NFT you're buying. You're buying it in its like heroic cinematic form.
Yeah, I think a lot of people at the moment, with the whole crypto as a scam thing, they've been underestimating NFTs, because they're so much more than what they are right now. And I really believe that you guys and Illuvium overall is going to really, really show off what NFTs can do in gaming, especially. I think NFTs have lots of applications elsewhere as well, but in gaming, I think your cinematic things are going to be so amazing. But the first thing I always think of whenever I see one of your NFT renders is it reminds me so much of something that you can place down in AR and have the alluvial stand on top and animate and everything. And I really hope that that's in plans for the future.
I mean, bruh, each one, when there's 150 of anything to do, it feels like a mountain, like when every single last step that you have to go through, and then you just add on one more step, it's like, it's rough. But those assets, instead of doing it with augmented reality, the plan is to have each one of those in-game assets also real time. So like in your Illuvidex in the game, you can cycle through the Unreal Engine idle animation of that character. And so augmented reality, not planned, virtual reality, not planned, but those assets we have are ready to go for cinematic rendering or anything we wanted to do down the road. Ideally, the game's a success, and then we have unlimited funding to expand and just become a Pokemon, just hire a division dedicated to just pumping up the NFT art elements. How do we make just purely not the gaming side of things, just purely these NFTs? What do we do to make them more collectible? Do we make live discs that are like a USB dongle for each card? A whole bunch of can of worms can be opened very easily in that respect. I think NFTs are very early, and even though NFTs and this industry is just getting absolutely shat on at the moment by, it seems like, everyone, it's kind of hard not to blame people. Every week there's another influencer selling some rug, and it's just a shit fest at the moment. Like, I don't really blame mainstream. I just didn't think it would be this much. Like I said to Kieran the other day, I said, bro, like, it's going to be harder to potentially influence mainstream gamers that NFTs aren't a scam than it is to make the freaking game in a year. Like, it's looking like a big uphill battle to convince mainstream, and it doesn't look like we've got a lot of support in this industry backing up, like, hey, there's actually some good products in here, like there's some good utility.
I think there's I agree it's going to be a bit of an uphill battle, but you've got a lot of good marketing strategies that I've looked at, and you probably don't know heaps about them, or you haven't like looked at them too much, but there was a lot of talk about sponsoring big gaming influencers that aren't crypto influencers, and I think that will help a lot. But there's also the big thing that you're doing that other crypto games haven't really touched on, which is the whole free-to-play side of things. So I'm really hoping that will help engage with those communities. So I don't really have any doubts that it will take off, but it will be a little bit of an uphill battle. There's no denying that. Just back.
Well, when you see, sorry, man. Like I've seen a couple of videos lately where, you know, people, there's no research done. It's just instantly blanketed over the entire space. So, like, how do you argue with a flat earther? You know, it's just like sometimes there's nothing you can do, and I just hope it doesn't get stained by even bigger. I feel like at the moment there hasn't been anything gigantic that's just black tarred the entire industry. But at any point in time, anything big could happen. You know, we've seen some pretty catastrophic stuff, you know, influencers promoting bad shit, but hopefully the industry smooths out and we get through whatever, all the market bullshit, and actually see some good products come out, some good games. That's the only thing that really do it.
Yeah. I think it will be good. I'm very excited for Illuvium and crypto gaming in general. So there's been a lot of discussion on the Illuvials and how they're future-proofed for future games and things like that. Can you talk to the audience who might not know a lot about game development and things like that, what kind of that means?
So in order for a game asset to be utilized across a different range of game types, you know, if we wanted to make a first-person shooter with all of the 150 Illuvials we've created, right, where you're in an open world running around like Monster Hunter and shooting these things and they're interacting, you need to make sure that that asset is capable of doing all of the technical things that are required in that style of game. So you need to make sure that the IK system is set up so that when it runs in the real world, it reacts to things like rocks that it's running over. If it's flying, it's programmed into the blueprint for that character that it can only fly and land in certain areas, like it's not going to land in water. You know, you have to have pathfinding. So there is a bunch of technical requirements, technical game development requirements, and then also technical artistic requirements, like the character rig has to be ready for any type of animation. The characters walk, run, move, left, right, up, down, you know, jump, animations all have to be there. And because we're doing an auto battler, that type of game doesn't have a lot of the functionality of other games, but it's just because you're not controlling the character. It's still doing those things, you just don't have control over it. So what we mean by that is, say we go make a different type of game, a top-down game or a first-person shooter game, the assets that we have are set up in a way where we could populate them in those worlds. There are things that we have to do still for each Illuvial, like setting up the IK, but the plan is to make every asset in the game a fully functional asset that can be utilized in different styles of game.
So that's really awesome. So there's definitely more games planned in the future. For all those that don't know, Illuvium isn't going to be a single game. Illuvium Zero is coming out before Illuvium, and there's going to be lots of games down the road. A shooter keeps being teased, and a dating simulator. I know everyone's pretty excited for that one. But there's lots of games coming down in the pipeline, and these models are just testament to how great this whole project is going to be. So how long, this one's a little bit loaded, but how long do you think it might take your team or any team you might hire in the future to design and finish a set of Illuvials? If that was their sole focus, how long do you think it might take them to finish up, to create a whole new set of Illuvials, even if they rehash some in different types and things like that?
I would say if I gave you a ballpark estimate, on how long it takes to get an alluvial from the ideation meeting to a fully functioning in-game asset. It can be anywhere from 6 to 9 months of work. And that's just being fully realistic. Now, we can get them in the game in some kind of playable state in even 3 months, but they won't have sounds hooked up. They might not have all of the VFX hooked up. Every single alluvial in the game needs so many different types of animations. When you do a walk animation, you have to do a left walk, a right walk, a hit reaction that's different each time. There's a whole bunch of different asset requirements, but we're going to try and stagger the sets of alluvials that come in smaller batches, and we haven't locked off the exact format in which we would release new characters. But I think the ideal thing to do would be to say, like, this is if you discover a new region, or we're working on a new region that hasn't been revealed yet, on that region being revealed, there are 10 new characters that come with it. And that way, the time it takes to do those 10 characters to complete finish is going to be about the same time as it takes to do a region, give or take a month or 2 months or something like that. Because we're launching an open beta, it's a little bit open because we can technically put a character in the game without everything finalized and just say, you don't need sounds attached in a beta to test if the character is overpowered or if it's being integrated well into the ecosystem. So a lot of unanswered questions that we have to solve. And now we're finally getting into this first private beta. And then following that private beta, we'll start doing some overworld. We'll do an overworld private beta with Crimson Waste, letting people run through, play the overworld arch where they teleport in, find the wakes, scan the deposits, mine the plants and minerals, and then fight some alluvials in the auto battler component. That will all happen in the Crimson Waste region in that second private beta. But at that point, we're starting to get some pretty good data on how it's feeling for the players, and we'll just adapt from there.
Yeah, so with the battle boards, I do have a fun question. There's been a lot of talk about the skins you could buy for the battle boards. That would be an NFT that maybe you don't sell secondhand or whatever. Have you worked on any skins for the battle board for the open beta when the game launches? Do you have any of that stuff set up, or is that going to come later on, do you think?
Skins can be taken two ways. There can be entirely different biomes for a battle board, or the actual battle board itself can just have a slightly different texture. In the balance sale, we did the NFT launch for Mozart, where Mozart had different skins. We had the bubblegum one, the obelisk one, things like that. I would personally, from an art direction point of view, avoid having skins on the battle boards. I don't think just because you can, it's always the best thing to do. You could just say, it's Illuvium. Let's just make everything a cash grab, and there's skins, and you can change your wristwatch color on the second dial down to the craziest levels. I don't think that enhances the experience. That's just me. Maybe that'll get voted out, or maybe that gets voted in. If the community wants it and it goes through an IIP, and it doesn't matter what I say. It doesn't matter if I say this is the dumbest idea ever. If that's what people are really wanting, then that's what will go through. But from my point of view, these are things that just don't influence Illuvium in any significant way. People who are hyped for this game need to start thinking how we're thinking from a game. Like, what is important to make this game successful? The auto battler gameplay has to be successful. The art itself first has to be I don't know if people are going to love the art in its final form in the game yet, because we haven't done playtesting with beta testers. We can get community feedback from 300,000 people and everyone's saying it's good, but until you see the final product, I'm just an open book. I'm just skeptical always of everything. And so I'm just not worried about little things like that. Like, we've got so much shit to do to make this game feature complete and polished. Battleboard skins, character customization, things like that come second for me, because I mean, what's the point? I could sit here and say, yeah, man, we're doing 7 different skins for each region. And it's like, well, that doesn't get us the new regions quicker, which is the more important thing. You know, get the 7 regions out to players. So, yeah, my mindset is a little bit less exciting to some of the community who just want all of these things. But, yeah, my stance on that is no, we haven't done any work on Battleboard skins. But if people wanted it really badly, pretty easy to do.
Maybe down the road, maybe far down the road.
I mean, just remember, you've got a council to get through. And if the council knows that the game's not feature complete, and then an IIP comes through and goes, hey, let's get the team onto Battleboard skins, it's not going to get voted through. At least you would hope so in a well-governed system. You know?
Yeah, that would definitely be the goal.
You could try and legalize AR rifles again in America. It doesn't mean it's going to happen.
So I know there's a lot of pressure to kind of get a mobile game out as soon as you guys can. And I know it's not coming straight over the open beta. And I think getting the game out first is definitely the right decision.
Yeah.
What I'm curious about is how might the graphical quality change when you go down to mobile? Obviously, it's going to get a bit weaker, but is it still going to look? Do you think it's still going to look as pretty?
When you see the levels baked down, it gives me a huge amount of hope, because the only difference between the mobile and the Unreal Engine version is texture resolution, geometry resolution, as in you're never going to be able to, like some of these assets we have are 30, 40, 100,000 triangles each. Because they're so giant, that all has to get totally stripped back. The poly counts are heavily reduced, but all of the assets we've built, because they're all handmade and we haven't tried to rush any of them, very easy to reduce the amount of detail. Very easy to take a 4K texture and make it 256 pixels wide, as opposed to starting with something small and trying to up-res it for PC or something. You know, so much easier to go to mobile. But with that being said, it's not just a flick of a switch. It's a very complex process that we have to go through. And that's why Kieran was talking about raising more money, because the mobile game was something that was going to come much later. And if people want the mobile game early, it's going to require concurrent development with a separate team who you have to hire, cost money. And so I think the goal for Kieran was to raise enough money where we could expedite the mobile game's development. But in terms of how the game would look, I would say it would just look like a low resolution version of Illuvium. You're not going to be seeing the game with ultra high res textures or geometry.
Yep. Okay. So I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but I missed that whole thing didn't go live.
What do you mean?
I didn't click the go live button on YouTube. I only clicked it on StreamYard. So, yes, that was interesting.
Did you record it?
No, I don't know if it recorded. I have no idea. So, I don't know where to go from here.
Well, do you want to... So I've only got 20 more minutes. I've got to... We could reorganize it for tomorrow.
No, tomorrow I can't, unfortunately. You couldn't do Thursday, could you?
I'm away for 4 days from Thursday to Sunday. We could do next week on Tuesday.
I'd be happy to do next week. Yeah.
Okay. Cool.
So we might as well talk about one last thing really quickly, and maybe just turn this into a Q&A or something. So It's really sad that I didn't click go live. I didn't realize I had to click it twice because I thought it was working. Very, very weird. But I'd love to learn about, before we do a quick Q&A, I'd love to learn about the Easter eggs. There have been lots of people discussing you putting lots of Easter eggs into the game.
Mm-hmm.
Can you tell us a bit about kind of how you're going about that?
So there's a backstory to the game, and that's something that we've kept under wraps. We don't want people talking about it too much, because story is one of those things where if you speculate on it too much, it can ruin the actual experience itself. But the backstory itself gives us the opportunity to tie in a lot of the lore elements that you won't see as a player, but that you'll read about, and you'll see hints of those things coming through. In other types of Easter eggs, we've obviously got memes from the community that we would tie in, little personal things. I've got a couple of memes that Jeff has created that we've kind of concepted into actual Easter eggs. We have Easter eggs like the very early Illuvium work before it was Illuvium, like the Fresno Nightwalker and stuff. We're going to be throwing little Easter eggs of things like that into the game, so people who've been following along with our development can see like a history of some of the things we encountered when we were developing early on, the mistakes we went through, and then throw them in.
Do you have any like Pokemon Easter eggs or anything, or like 151st Alluvial that you're working on?
We do have a very cool Pokemon Easter egg thrown in. I won't say what it is, but it's in our game's tutorial.
So definitely. If I'm hunting for say 100 Easter eggs or 200, 300.
Nowhere near that much. As always, like when I say Easter eggs, I mean, we've thrown a few in, and that will build out. I think that's the type of stuff that gives the game its character. That's what gives you that love for it, little things. And we just need to make sure that we don't like overcrowd it. Everything we're doing, it's like, is this necessary? And if it's something as simple as just like, okay, get one of the concept artists to concept like a totem of that meme that was in the community, and it's not going to take too long to implement, we can get that in.
So we'll do a really quick Q&A just for everyone before you have to go. Is there anything you guys want to know? I'm really sorry about that whole thing, and maybe it did record. I just didn't click go live, but it was showing me information. I don't know. I don't know if this button works. No, that's not going to work. So is there any questions that you guys have for Grant, considering that we want to talk about the art as much as we can, and not really the tokenomics or the gameplay? So I know a lot of people. So I know you covered this with me before we went live, but just really quickly, like the models are future proofed and they're all rigged up for other games and things. And you guys are able to get. How long would it take you to get an Illuvial set out?
Of how many characters?
Yeah, like a set of Illuvials that you hadn't released yet. How many characters and kind of what time frame are you looking at for that?
So we're going to try and do it. My estimate is probably 9 to 12 characters at a time. 4 Illuvials with their 3 stages, so 12 unique characters. Because I'm not sure if this was before the record. I think it didn't get recorded, but it would take us about anywhere from 3 to 6 to 9 months to do a full complete cycle through the characters to get them from step A to Z. So once we get the first 150 characters out in the open beta launch, the goal is to release in small lots after that, which we'll start working on set 2 in the next couple of weeks. We're at that point now.
So these questions so far are very game oriented. Like, how hard would it be to catch the first Illuvial? And when will the land?
It's designed to be progression. It's not just like the game's freakishly hard from the start. You run through our tutorial. The tutorial explains the basic synergies, how to capture things, and then you have to go out into the overworld and learn the mechanics so that you can actually, like, if you just play totally random characters and you don't know anything about the game, it's going to be very difficult to win. But the first characters that you start capturing won't be relatively high levels because you wouldn't want to go in and fight those. You would lose against them. Similar to Pokemon, there can be characters level 1 to 50. It's the same in our game. the characters have different power levels. So,
okay.
or different stats. And that's where if you're capturing a character for the ranked arena, once you capture it, it doesn't matter if you capture a level 1 or a level 50, right? You just capture that character. So you're obviously going to want to capture weaker characters for ranked gameplay, because there's no point capturing a high level character. But that means that in the Leviathan arena, where it's all a kind of no holds bar, you're going to want those super high level characters, and that's where the value is going to come in. You know, there are a lot of Pokemon cards out there that are duplicates, but they're rated like a PSA 6 or 7, and they're nowhere near as valuable as that super rare PSA 10, where there might only be a few of them. So for the collectability and the value of the cards, the higher level characters you get, that's where that influence is going to come from. But from a purely gameplay perspective, that's why we've normalized out the characters' abilities, so that everyone doesn't have to go through a giant pay-to-win grind.
So Vulcan really wants to know which brother has the highest score on the survival mode testing you guys have been doing, because I'm assuming you've played it.
Yeah, apparently I do. But I mean, I don't know if Aaron was saying that just to, Kieran installed the latest demo. I told him to get in. I played the last demo last weekend. So every single week we do an internal demo release. And the previous demo we released was not fully functioning, obviously, but enough to play the game and run through and start to see everything come together. And then this week's version introduced all the synergies, but then one of the characters didn't take damage and just ruined the whole experience. So I was telling Kieran, get the fucking demo installed, because now we can finally start seeing who's actually better at this game. And then I started playing and I was like, fuck, this isn't going to work. One of these characters just isn't dying. There's nothing I can do. It's going to totally screw it. So we're waiting for next week to just do a proper sit down. I spent a solid 3 to 4 hours last weekend playing the survival game, just
Awesome.
running through. I just felt wow, I can't believe this is coming together. We're doing a private beta this early after development. It's madness. It's crazy that we've gotten to this point.
So excited.
I'm sure there are a lot of people probably thinking they won't have a private beta for another year or something like that. A lot of skeptics, and we got a long way to go to get a fully finished game out. But to see a functional version of the survival mode, and then to have the environments getting close to being, or at least the Crimson Waste environment getting close to go for the second private beta, it's very exciting times.
Yeah. So Walking Feather, or Laurie, is wondering about the Netflix TV show. Now, I've heard, I don't know if I've seen it on interviews and things, that the script is already written. And I don't know if that's just to kind of help the lore when you get into the game and the gameplay and stuff like that. But the Netflix show, will it be live action or CGI? Do you kind of have any inkling on that?
So first of all, there's no script written for the live action, right? We've got a full backstory for the game that Cyrus is writing, with a whole bunch of story elements that we have to create in-game cinematics for over the next year, which we'll work with our cinematic department on. They're called the Shapeshifters. They're a studio who we've worked with on the previous trailer, and they're some of the best animators in the world. They're a team of people who've come from companies like ILM and merged into this collective of almost freelancers, and we brought them in under our wing and said, what's it going to take to just put all your focus on Illuvium? And that would fall into the category of the Netflix series, because I'm pretty torn at the moment. All I've ever wanted to do outside of CGI was direct a movie, not 2 or 3, just direct one movie, put the love that The Matrix got into it, and then call it quits. But just make one really, really good movie, and movies suck now. The whole movie industry is just kind of shit. There's never any good movies anymore. It's just you just can't find anything. And even the movies that are good, it's that the industry is so shit now. It's not like movies, people don't have the same love. And so that is shifting over towards a Netflix series, and you get this, like the Squid Game, just capturing this huge amount of hype where everyone's just obsessed with it, and that used to be what happened with movies. So
yeah,
I would say to capture the vibe of what Pokemon did, a Netflix series would be better, but I just wanted to make a movie. But I don't think a movie's viable anymore. So if a movie's not viable, we would do a Netflix series, and it would most likely be, I'd say 99%, it would be CGI. You know, it would be, maybe it would even be done in engine, you know, just like we did
Unreal.
the trailer, you know, in Unreal Engine. Just utilize all of the in-game character assets and environment assets to build out the sets from, and just do it like that. That could be a very cool thing. I think we could hit a very high visual quality, not as good as, say, an offline cinematic from Blur or Blizzard, but we could hit a really high standard, and it would be one of the first. It would definitely be the first Unreal Engine Netflix series. So
yes, it would definitely be like game changing. I can't imagine how you would animate mouths and things, but besides that, it'd be pretty crazy.
We've got good animators. We've got good animators, and there can be, in the film industry, not many people want to jump from film to games because they think there's a quality loss. And the same reason why I never wanted to jump from print advertising to games or movies, because I just wanted to do the highest quality work. But now it's starting to shift. With Unreal Engine 5, that's going to make things even easier. And the beautiful thing about us working with shapeshifters is they were pioneering that shift to screwing off render engines like V-Ray, and let's just do it in Unreal Engine. We get 90% the same quality, but the production time speeds up by a factor of 5 to 10 times. You know, we can do it a month what would take us a year in V-Ray, and that's real. Like, I've witnessed that on the trailer. You guys saw that we put that trailer together in about 8 weeks, which 3.5-minute trailer with a lot of stuff going on. Pretty crazy, but there's the proof that doing stuff in Unreal Engine could be really cool.
Oh yeah, like especially that scene with Atlas coming up at the front and all the lighting and everything. It's so clear that this could be translated into a movie and no one would bat an eye, you know? Yeah. All right, so I've got to really thank you for your time, and sorry about that mix-up. We'll definitely have to organize something again. Hopefully it did save in some way. I guess we'll find out. I'll let you know if it did.
Yeah, no worries. No worries.
We'll definitely have to reorganize. I'm sorry about that. I'm sorry, chat.
No worries, all good. Shit happens. Shit happens.
Yes, so I didn't have to do this last time because I started the stream a different way this time. And
it's all good. We'll find more time.
All right. Thanks for your time again.
No worries,
have a good holiday too.
Yeah, it's 4 days before I go into a hole for the open beta. So 4 days of break from Wednesday to Thursday to Sunday, and then I'm back into a nightmarish cavern again, going for the next goalpost. So thanks very much, bro. Enjoy, and I'll catch you later.
Thanks. Thank you. Thanks for answering the question. See ya.
No worries, bro.
Bye.